Welcome back once again to the Food and Drink Business Podcast live stream of interviews being conducted here on the exhibition floor at Food Pro 2023. And this, like all the other ones, is sponsored by TriMat Systems. Lindy Hughson, your turn in the hot seat once again.
Yes, back on the packaging beat, and very excited to have Gilad Sadan here with me. He's from Navi Co Global, but Gilad calls himself the packaging hippie. Tell us why you do that, Gilad.
Thank you, Lindy. Appreciate being on your podcast. The packaging hippie is something that started about 3 years ago when COVID has started, and you sit at home and you have some more time to think and ponder and meditate on things. And it somewhat was a combination of words that was very polarizing, and I think did a good job describing the mindset that I have towards the packaging industry, and especially in a fresh produce context. And it was something that combining those two words together stood out, and my customers and potential clients that I was dealing with started commenting on it. So I was able to identify that there's something there that stands out. And it's those two words together, packaging, that is being associated with it being bad for the environment and kills turtles and chokes dolphins and so on, especially in a plastic context, unfortunately, in recent times. And a hippie is something that is the polar opposite of it, that they grow their own veggies and they're self-sustainable, and they're very much against packaging, and they look, to do things for the benefit of the environment. So combining those two words together, one stood out because they contradict each other, and two, I think they symbolize what it is that I try to do, and my contribution to the fresh produce industry is how those things can work well together. The hippie-like mindset with really caring for the environment and wanting to do genuine good, as opposed to greenwashing good or just be seen as being good, but doing genuine good with the hippie-like mindset, and the packaging on the other side, and how combining those two together create something that is beneficial to the consumer, to the retailers, to the growers. And I find that when you're able to connect between those dots, then it really creates a positive project, and one that flows well. And I do have somewhat of a hippie mindset, even
Get
though
into the zone.
Correct.
Exactly.
And have the right energy behind it. Yeah.
So I just listened to a presentation that you made as part of the AIP presentation on sustainable packaging for food. And you talked there about, you in the context of COVID and all the things that we've been going through the last years, you spoke about non-binary time that we're living in. Can you explain what you mean by that?
Yes, certainly. And I hope it comes across when I do talk about it. But I think before COVID, people were looking for a single solution to a problem, or looking at things in a very on or off kind of way.
You mean with packaging, it was this material or that material?
Correct. It's either this or that.
Yeah.
Find me that holy grail that if I do this, then everything will be fixed. Without the ability to think that it might not be like a light switch, it's either on or it's off. And I think, generally speaking, this whole black and white, up or right, up or down, left or right, that sort of mindset is not reflective of the time that we're living in. One, generally, I think people are a lot more open-minded these days. And in a packaging context, they understand that there's not a single piece of packaging that's going to solve everyone's problems. And, take, for example, a couple of years ago, biodegradable and compostable, through lack of education and through some trends, everyone thought that is the solution. Give me compostable, give me and everything is that is the solution for everything. And that's a very binary kind of thinking, where I think through the times that we're living in, understanding that there are it's not an either or. If you're looking at binary, it's either on or off. The non-binary option will be as well as. So it's this as well as that, as well as this, as well as that.
So, for example, paper combined with a plastic solution,
100%.
perhaps. Yeah.
That, and I've interpreted in my own example of combining it within a single piece of product, but also understanding that both different substrates can coexist and live next to plastic, can coexist next to packaging made out of cardboard. They're not there to replace each other.
Exactly.
They're there to enhance each other.
And one is fit for purpose in one context and not necessarily in another. And one of the other things that you were discussing looking at sustainability was that you were saying that now, more so than perhaps before, sustainability sells. You have lots of conversations about sustainability when you're talking in a client briefing session. You have to, it's all you talk about almost. And as a result of that, sustainability now can justify a premium when it comes to pricing. So elaborate.
Again, it's a very interesting times that we're living in. Even when you look at data from retailers about consumer sentiment, up until about 6 months ago, sustainability was ranked number one, and therefore the entire emphasis and focus was on more sustainable materials and environmental related activities. Where now, especially with the cost of living becoming a main focus area for consumers, it's now ranked number one, and sustainability is ranked number three in the list of consumer sentiment through the data that's being aggregated. So the interesting thing is when you look at sustainability holistically and not just in the packaging lens, you realize that it can manifest itself in various different ways, as well as environmental and packaging related issues, where if your food lasts longer, you are more sustainable. If you're able to consume all of it and you're not discarding it because you've run out of ideas of how to use it, that's an example in sustainability. If you're able to sell all it is that you grow, is an example in sustainability. If you take care of your soil and your water resources and genuinely doing things that are beneficial and healthy for the ground that you're working, then that's an act in sustainability. So I think sustainability is important to understand what it genuinely means. It's not just a word that you throw out there in order to grab attention,
or to just implicate that you're green.
correct?
Yeah.
And you're also able to then use that in a design-like fashion. When you're able to promote a more sustainable image of yourself, of your crop, of your company, then you're able to get the consumer's attention compared to other things that might not presenting themselves as sustainable as others. But it's not only, I think it extends further than just the material that you use themselves.
And you gave a great example of, in the context of being able to charge more in different settings or contexts, of selling some packaged limes in a liquor store at a much elevated price.
I think context has a lot to do with that. And when you're looking to buy a slab of Corona at 10 o'clock at night, where all the other fruit shops are closed, you probably pay double that to what was charged in the first place. It's the need and the availability that takes place, but it's really being able to make produce fresh and more accessible in outlets that are non-traditionally produce driven. So in the bottle shop environment, everything has a long shelf life. Everything is prepackaged. Everything has a barcode on it. It's very transactional like. So to introduce something that is fresh and of short shelf life, it was always a challenge. There was the demand from the consumers, but there was not a suitable way to make it accessible to them. So pre-packing two of them, which I think is a bit more value than just a single one, and presenting it at a point of purchase on the shelf or in the fridge, in situ, next to the makes total sense. That consumer, it's that growing moment that people look at it and say, actually, thank you for thinking for me, because I actually need that. And $5, but I'm paying $50 for a slab. So what's another $5?
Now you have done some great work with a lot of several big brands and other brands of fresh produce suppliers, and you've showed us several examples over time. We've certainly published some of those in PKN. I see you've brought something with you here today. Tell us about that.
So this is the most recent innovation that has been launched by my client Costa and myself. We work in very close partnership, and credit to them. They're a company that understands the value that there is to unpacking those types of innovations. So it's 100% paper bag, that through the challenges that we've seen with Red Cycle, we were genuinely looking for a suitable alternative to replace the BOPP bunch bags. And we were able to develop this innovation that not only the bag itself, but the mesh is made out of 100%
So this
paper.
is for premium seedless grapes, is that right?
Correct, and a particular variety called Autumn Crisp, which is a very great eating quality, eating experience variety. It's large, it's crisp, but there's a genuine, unique point of difference there.
I think perhaps the people listening or watching won't be able to see quite clearly, but the window onto the grapes
Yes,
is in fact a mesh.
yes.
And so what is that mesh made of?
So the mesh is made out of woven paper too,
Oh, wow.
and that's really where
I'm just going to have a little feel over here.
where the clear innovation is.
Okay.
So even from a tactile standpoint, it really
Yes.
to the touches feels very, very nice, and actually surprisingly
Strong?
strong, or a lot stronger than what you would expect it to be. So it has the ability to expand a bit and become very malleable, so it somewhat hugs the grapes that it's in. So it's the first season for us, and it's definitely something that we see an opportunity to
Well, if
promote.
people want to read more about it, we have recently published it on packagingnews.com.au, so they can go along there and have a look. Now, Gilad, you quite widely traveled, and you said to me that you love to go to overseas exhibitions and just to markets overseas. So what are some of the trends that you're seeing in fresh produce packaging?
It's interesting to capture what region you are in as well. An Asian region in its approach towards environmental issues and packaging is very different to the European market. And it's interesting being based in Australia, where there's a huge component of Australian produce being exported as well, and what that packaging sentiment is. It's also interesting to travel through Europe, as to me they are the leaders in fresh produce packaging. You see things happen there that are way ahead of the rest of the world. There's certainly a much greater trust element between the consumer and the retailers in the European markets.
Okay.
So the need to see the product in its entirety is not as great as what you see in the Australian retailers. So the trust in the high quality that is being packed is there, and therefore there's not as much of a need to view all the product, and that then has an influence on how you design your packaging, how much viewing area you need to present to view the product, and what sort of materials are you using. Are you using a cardboard punnet within a plastic window, or are you able to remove the plastic window? So it has a significant influence on how you design your pack for visibility of the fruit. One of the things that I've noticed is that, say in the last decade, things that were trending in Europe as far as packaging is concerned would have taken 5 years to come to Australia by the time you really adopt them and launch them, where I think that gap is somewhat minimizing through retailers that have people working for them that are ex-European background in a retail sense, as well as more Australians traveling these days, seeing what's trending overseas, and then bringing it and actively showing it to the retailers and saying, look, this is what I saw. Do you think it's relevant? What would you think about it? So I think the gap is somewhat closing.
So, Gilad, what's next for Navi Co?
Oh, that's an interesting. More of the same. I think more projects side by side that somewhat support each other and have relevancy between them. So being as efficient in that sense as possible. And I think continuing to do genuine good, being able to, through the recognition that packaging is a genuine marketing tool, and I think these days there's a much greater understanding of that, is how to leverage that format and that tool to really be able to market produce to consumers to eat and run a healthy lifestyle. You know, the interesting thing with produce is that packaging has the most significant benefit to the product that it packs, and it also has the most significant scrutiny towards it too.
Yes,
So
in fresh produce,
yes.
absolutely. Well, thank you very much for all
Thank
those
you.
insights and for joining us here at Food Pro. Really good to speak to you, Gilad.
Thank you.
Thanks, Gilad. Thanks, Lindy. And of course, thanks to everyone who tuned in to this food and drink business interview that was conducted live on the exhibition floor here at Food Pro 2023. We'll be back shortly with another informative discussion sponsored by TriMat Systems, who have asked me to read this out for you. Looking to reduce labor processes, resulting in a boost in your profits? TriMat Systems offer automation solutions that will take your productivity to the next level. contact them today at trimat.com.